This is the Health and Wellness channel, and we want to shift our attention to talk about proton pump inhibitors. Proton pump inhibitors are drugs, basically drugs used to manage peptic ulcer disease. Most of you have ever used OMEPRAZOLE, PANTOPRAZOLE, ESOMEPRAZOLE, and all those drugs that are used to manage drugs. So, ulcers is treated or is managed by three groups of drugs. Number one are the antacids, whose role is basically to neutralize the stomach acid because they are basic. And once you take them, they react with the acid and neutralize the stomach acid. So basically, they raise the stomach pH towards basic. Number two are H2 inhibitors or H2 receptor antagonists. These are the likes of ranitidine and cimetidine. Okay, again, they inhibit receptors that help you pump the acid into the stomach. Those are histamine 2 receptors. Then the last one is proton pump inhibitors, which we are going to concentrate more on today. So proton pump inhibitors are again omeprazole, esomeprazole, pantoprazole, and the likes. So why am I taking a keen on proton pump inhibitors? Is because of two things. One, they alter the stomach pH, and number two, there is a proton pump in the Sertoli cells in your scrotum or in your testis, and that is affected by these drugs. So basically, before I even talk about the drugs, let me start with the proton pump. So what is a proton pump? Now, a proton pump is a mechanism that is available in the cells that the cells use to pump out hydrogen ions. Now remember, hydrogen ions is what we are calling the acid. So it pumps them out or in exchange for potassium. And this pump uses ATP, which is energy. And again, this pump produces energy, is involved in production of energy. Okay, as much as it uses ATP, it also is involved in production of energy. Okay, so now we've said that hydrogen ions are what we call the acid. So in the stomach, for example, in the stomach wall, the parietal cells have this proton pump, and its work is to pump hydrogen ions into the stomach so that the stomach acid concentration goes high, because once you concentrate the acid with hydrogen ions, then its concentration goes high, and that means the pH goes low. Understand that when the concentration goes high, the pH goes low, because stomach acid concentration is supposed to be at 2 to 3, which is enough to even melt a steel metal or a razor blade. So stomach acid is supposed to be highly concentrated, and this is because of specific reasons. Number one, stomach acid protects you from harmful bacteria that you consume through food. Number two, stomach acid, when it is highly concentrated, and that's why I'm saying it must be highly concentrated, it tightens up. It's the one that is responsible for tightening up of the sphincters that are above the stomach. Those are the cardiac sphincter. So tightening of this sphincter is enhanced by concentrating stomach acid. So if you dilute or if you mess up with the stomach acid and the concentration starts to go towards the basic, that means that sphincter, the cardiac sphincter, will start opening. Once it starts opening, the contents of the stomach will run back or regurgitate back into your esophagus, and that's where you start the process of getting GERD. So that's why you get these epigastric pains and all these heartburns. Is because of the loosening of that sphincter. So most of you tend to think that the higher concentration of the acid, or the more the acid in the stomach, that is how you get GERD. That is false. The higher the concentration of the acid in the stomach, or the more concentrated the acid in the stomach, the lower your chances of getting GERD, because the sphincter will close and therefore stomach contents will not come back into your esophagus to burn you. So once you start messing the stomach environment with drugs like antacids, these proton pump inhibitors, and even foods, alcohol, and all those, and sugar, once you start messing them, because these drugs either reduce the amount of acid in the stomach or they neutralize the stomach acid. Now once you do that, you loosen up the sphincter. Once you loosen up that sphincter, then food comes back, or stomach contents come back, and you start again suffering. So these drugs basically are not supposed to be used to manage gastritis or reflux disease, because if you use them, they will only mask symptoms for some time, and then you go back to normal, which is the abnormal, which is the disease now. So this proton pump is found in several cells, but the major one we are going to concentrate about is the one that is in the stomach, which is the parietal cells that produce HCl, and the Sertoli cells that produce the sperm. So those two in the testis. So those two are the cells that express this proton pump immensely, and those two are the ones that are affected by drugs in this class of proton pump inhibitors, and that's why we are mentioning the two. Now hold that thought. We already said that stomach acid is supposed to be highly concentrated. Now anything that affects the stomach acid concentration is going to mess up the stomach environment. And remember, if you mess up the stomach environment, you'll have several factors, because now you see the concentration we already said is 2 to 3. So if you alter this environment, remember in the stomach there are bacteria that survive under this high concentration or low pH environment, which is highly acidic. So these bacteria, they are there naturally. They help us digest food, they help us digest fiber, and again they protect us from harmful bacteria. Why? Because they balance the ratio between the harmful and non-harmful bacteria. So if you alter this acid concentration in the stomach, then you aid the growth of bad bacteria. And remember, these good bacteria are the ones that are used for immunity. So if you alter stomach environment, you kill these good bacteria and you help the bad bacteria to survive. So you'll get gastritis, you'll get diarrhea, indigestion, and all those side effects that come as a result of killing this microbiota. Number 2, indigestion. Remember, the stomach acid, if it's highly concentrated, then that's how you digest proteins, because proteins cannot be digested without pepsin. And pepsin is the one that helps you produce HCl, hydrochloric acid, from parietal cells, so that you can aid in digestion of proteins. So if you don't digest proteins, then automatically you start bloating. So again, that's a problem. Then we already mentioned about the sphincters, opening and closing of the sphincters. So these are basically the functions of the HCl in the stomach, and concentrated HCl for that matter. And then so no digestion. So in digestion, microbiota are altered, sphincters start to open, and immunity, because of destruction of good bacteria. So PPIs alter stomach concentration. How? They block this pump that pumps hydrogen into the stomach to concentrate the acid. So that means there will be low concentration of the acid, and that means you've altered stomach concentration. So all these effects will have to come: the indigestions, the gastritis, the regurgitation of contents from the stomach into the esophagus will have to come, and the development of bacteria. So you'll have to experience them, because you've altered already the stomach environment. And again, in the sperm cell, in the Sertoli cells, which form the sperm, this pump is the one that pumps hydrogen into the sperm, and therefore maintains an acidic, a normal or a specific acidic environment around the sperms. Now this means continuous use of these PPIs will alter the environment around the sperms, and therefore you'll have poor quality of sperms. You will have low motility of sperms. You'll have low sperm count, and therefore infertility. So those people who take these drugs for a long period of time experience both gastritis and low sperm quality. And that is what I call the modern man, because the modern man is highly concentrated on eating carbohydrates, drinking alcohol, and smoking cigarettes, and then walk to the pharmacy in the evening to buy these omeprazoles to help you lower, in quotes, your acid or your stomach acid. And therefore, every time you take these drugs, you're altering your sperm, you're destroying your sperm quality, and you're exposing yourself to more gastritis. Remember also, we have H. pylori, and H. pylori basically is like a normal flora. It has stayed with us for a very long period of time until it has become like a normal flora. It doesn't affect you in any way until you start altering the stomach environment. Okay, so H. pylori doesn't like acidic environment, so it goes into hiding. Once it's introduced in the stomach and then finds an acidic environment, it has to survive. So it develops mechanisms that will help it survive. How? Forms a protein coat around itself, then burrows into the stomach wall. And since there is concentrated acid in the stomach, that wound heals. So inflammation is healed by concentrating stomach acid. Concentrating stomach acid heals inflammation, and that's why I say people who have stomach ulcers should fast. Once you fast, you concentrate stomach acid and the wound starts to heal because it heals inflammation. Now, once this H. pylori has gone into hiding, it will stay there for as long as it can until you start eating seed oils, start eating carbohydrates, drinking alcohol, and foods or drugs that will change or alter the environment of the stomach and force the environment to go towards the basic. Now, once you do that, H. pylori now likes the basic environment. So it comes out of the protein coat and then starts to invade your stomach walls until the day that you'll fast to concentrate stomach acid, then he goes back into hiding. So you will never eradicate H. pylori by taking those antibiotics, because those antibiotics will also again alter the stomach microbiota. They kill even the good bacteria. So it will take time before your stomach goes back to normal. So even if you take these antibiotics, you will get into more problems because of, one, destroying stomach bacteria, and even number two, altering the environment of the stomach, because some of them are even basic. Now, so H. pylori has gone into hiding. Has come out of hiding. And once you start fasting, he goes back into hiding. So the goal of treating H. pylori is not to kill him through use of those kits. And I'm not demarketing kits. I'm just saying it's not the use of those kits that will help you recover from H. pylori related ulcers. It is the concentration of stomach acid that will send H. pylori back into hiding. There's a difference, a huge difference. So H. pylori is not harmful until you make the stomach environment useless, in quotes. Good. So now we've had the story of H. pylori, and we've altered our sperm quality through use of these omeprazoles and pantoprazole. So I want to encourage you, or I want to urge you, that anytime you start consuming those carbohydrates and simple carbohydrates, you are messing up your system. Remember, there is no deficiency syndrome for lack of carbohydrates. So even if you don't eat carbohydrates, you will not suffer from any condition. However, eating carbohydrates exposes you to a certain condition or certain conditions. So carbohydrates are the only foods that when you don't eat them, there is no deficiency condition. But when you eat them, there is a deficiency condition, which is diabetes, hypertension, insulin resistance. And insulin resistance will bring you metabolic syndrome, which is basically the ones I'm mentioning: diabetes, hypertension, hypercholesterolemia, so you have high content of cholesterol in your blood. Again, kidney problems, and all this, even cancer, all these fall under the blanket of metabolic syndrome. So how do you manage your ulcers? Instead of eating these simple carbohydrates, the first thing you do away with the simple carbohydrates. So sugars, there's no difference between natural and synthetic sugar. The body does not know that. The liver does not know the difference between the sugars. The liver just knows this is glucose, so I'll metabolize this as glucose. And this is fructose, I'll metabolize this as fructose. So once these sugars get into the liver, they bring a problem. So stay away from simple sugars totally. Okay, if you have to consume carbohydrates that are high in fiber. The sweet potatoes, the arrowroots, the green bananas, those are high in fiber, and they will at least they will not spike insulin levels in blood. Okay, good. Number two, no seed oils. So stop cooking using those seed oils. Start cooking using animal fat. And all the time, mainstream nutritionists have been telling people to move from liquid cooking oil to solid liquid oil. That is so much misinformation, because these are still seed oils. The only difference is they've been to make this liquid one to become a solid, you pass it through high concentration of hydrogen, which is highly toxic again. So you cannot tell somebody to start consuming the solid oil, or the solid fat and neglect the liquid one. It's doing the same thing actually. So basically, you move from seed oils straight to either olive oil, which is a vegetable oil, or animal fat, which I already mentioned in previous videos. Then no smoking and alcohol, because you'll alter environment of the stomach, and avoid drugs that will expose you to injuries to the wall. And these are the NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. These are the diclofenacs, the aspirins, the brufens, ibuprofens, and the meloxicams. Those drugs that you use to manage pain on a normal basis are the same drugs that will erode your stomach walls, because they inhibit formation of prostaglandins. And prostaglandins are like hormones that protect the wall of your stomach. They also play a role in protecting your kidneys. So if you keep consuming these drugs, you not only destroy your stomach, you also destroy your kidneys. So basically, those are just ways to stop or to manage or to stay free from gastric ulceration or gastritis. So that is it. So kindly, men, avoid the use of esomeprazoles and PPIs. These drugs are supposed to be used for less than 1 week. If at all they've been prescribed for use, use them for less than 1 week. But every time you go to the pharmacies to purchase these drugs to help you control your gastritis, yet your diet is still the same, you'll keep on going to these pharmacies, and little will you know that the time you're trying to find a baby, you're not getting any results. Even after all those sexual sessions, you're not bearing a child, or you're not getting a child. Why? Because you'll never remember that all these proton pump inhibitors that you're using are the ones that are causing infertility. So that is the explanation behind proton pump inhibitors being responsible for gastritis and GERD, and also infertility in men. So I hope you've learned something new. And again, continue subscribing and supporting us. Keep sharing our contents. For those who have subscribed, we thank you. And yeah, keep sharing and commenting. So we'll see you in the next.